The Frost and the Flame. Chapter 1. The driftwood stranger, the wind howled across the endless blue, carrying the scent of brine and death. Einar Thorsson, his fingers clung to the splintered mast as the waves tossed him like a child's toy. The storm had scattered his ship and crew, leaving him alone with nothing but his steel and his breath. His cloak, once crimson, clung to his back in heavy rags. The iron pendant of Thor's hammer dangled from his neck, and in his belt sheath rested a dagger etched with glowing runes, the cursed relic he had sworn to deliver to his Jarl. Darkness claimed him. Einar awoke face down on unfamiliar soil. The air here was thick with warmth and the scent of flowers foreign to his senses. Towering trees with twisted trunks loomed above him, their branches like fingers grasping at the sky. "You should not be here." The voice was musical, yet stern. Einar pushed himself up and turned to face her, a woman draped in woven gold and leaves, her hair glowing like embers in the dim forest. Her skin shimmered like morning dew, and her eyes, bright as emeralds, locked on his. "I mean no harm," Einar grunted, hand gripping his dagger. The runes flickered in response. The Diwata narrowed her eyes. "That blade, you carry corruption." Before Einar could speak, a flutter of wings broke the silence. A brilliant blue bird, its feathers glinting like sapphires, landed nearby. The Diwata turned sharply. "The Tigma Manukan foretells omens," she murmured. "It has come because of you." Einar barely had time to react before vines erupted from the earth, wrapping tightly around his arms and chest. The Diwata strode closer, her bare feet leaving glowing footprints in the soil. "That relic. It disturbs the balance," she whispered. "Why have you brought this cursed steel to my island?" "It's a gift for my Jarl," Einar gasped, struggling. "But if I die here, it's of no use to him." The Diwata hesitated. "Then you will live long enough to see what your blade has awakened." From the forest depths came a distant growl, low and guttural, followed by the rustling of massive scales against bark, and a foul, sulphurous stench that clawed at the air. Something ancient and vast had stirred. Chapter 2. A Serpent's Hunger. The air thickened as Einar followed the Diwata deeper into the forest. The trees twisted into unnatural shapes, their bark blackened and cracked as though scorched by unseen flames. Birds no longer sang, and even the insects seemed to fall silent. The silence gnawed at Einar's nerves. "The Bakunawa's stirring is felt everywhere," the Diwata warned. "This land was once lush, now the roots decay, and the spirits grow restless." "What is this Bakunawa?" Einar asked, hand resting warily on the hilt of his cursed dagger. "A guardian turned devourer," the Diwata explained. "Long ago it was a celestial dragon, a keeper of the moon's light, but greed twisted its heart. It sought to swallow the moons, believing their power would make it immortal. The gods struck it down, and it slumbered beneath the earth, until your cursed blade disturbed it. They came upon a clearing. In its center lay a great stone altar, half buried in vines. Ancient carvings marked its surface, spirals resembling lunar cycles and serpent coils. The air stank of sulfur and something darker. "This place is sacred," the Diwata murmured. "Your blade has drawn the Bakunawa's gaze here." The runes on Einar's dagger flared suddenly, casting cold blue light on his face. The ground trembled. A distant roar shook the trees. Leaves spiraled to the earth like dying embers. The Bakunawa was coming. "We must prepare," the Diwata said firmly. "If it reaches this altar, it will devour the very life force of this island." "What must I do?" Einar asked. "Learn to master your dagger's power," she said. "Your people forged it from ice itself, the frozen breath of a frost giant. If you wield it properly, you may turn the Bakunawa's flame against it." Training was brutal. The Diwata summoned vines and roots to strike at Einar, forcing him to parry with his dagger. Frost clung to every surface he touched, chilling him to the bone. Yet each time he hesitated, the vines found their mark. His body ached with welts and bruises. "You fight like a beast, not a warrior," the Diwata scolded. The dagger's power demands focus, not rage. And your magic demands I dance like a leaf, Einar shot back. I am a warrior of steel and blood, not roots and whispers. Then you will fail, she said coldly. The following night, the Bakunawa emerged. It tore through the jungle, its obsidian scales glinting like shards of glass, its serpentine body coiled around trees, snapping trunks like twigs. The molten gold of its eyes locked on Einar, and it unleashed a torrent of fire. Now, the Diwata cried. Einar thrust the dagger forward. Frost erupted from the blade's tip, colliding with the flames. Steam swallowed the battlefield, blinding them both. You cannot win through strength alone, the Diwata's voice rang out. Trust the power. Guide it. Through the haze, Einar remembered her words. He closed his eyes and let the dagger's cold pulse guide his hand. When he opened them again, the steam parted, and the Bakunawa loomed over him. The beast's jaws snapped shut, inches from Einar's face. Chapter 3. The dance of steel and flame. The air was thick with the scent of scorched earth. Trees lay blackened where the Bakunawa had passed, and the once lush jungle had turned to brittle ash. The serpent's fire had left a trail of ruin across the island. Einar knelt at the heart of the devastation, cradling his dagger. His breath steamed in the air. Frost still clung to his fingers, but the power felt fragile, like ice stretched too thin. You must learn control, the Diwata warned. The Bakunawa thrives on chaos. If you cannot tame the storm within you, you will feed its power. Their training began anew. This time, the Diwata pushed Einar to his limits. Vines lashed at his feet, bursts of flame tested his reflexes, and illusions of the Bakunawa twisted through the jungle shadows. Again! She barked, weaving a whirlwind of leaves that blinded him. Einar slashed wildly with his dagger, sending icy arcs in all directions, but none struck true. You're wasting the blade's strength, the Diwata scolded. The power must be focused. And how do I control something that barely obeys me? Einar growled. You listen, she said softly. The blade carries the whispers of frost, the heartbeat of Ymir's cold breath. Trust it. Guide it. One night, they ventured to an ancient altar deep in the jungle. The stones bore carvings of runes Einar recognized from his homeland, the language of the old gods. The Diwata knelt, tracing the symbols with reverence. This is the altar of forgotten pacts, she explained. Your ancestors once called upon gods here, before your people forgot this island. The dagger was forged in ice magic meant to imprison flames. You must awaken that power. Einar stepped forward, pressing his dagger to the altar. The runes flared blue, and frost spread outward, crackling across the stones. Visions flooded his mind, flashes of Jotunheim's frozen peaks, of frost giants encased in glacial tombs. The power surged through him, cold and sharp. I see it, Einar murmured. The frost, it's alive. It will obey you, if you master your anger, the Diwata warned. Moments later, the ground trembled. The Bakunawa's twisted roar echoed through the night. The beast had sensed the power growing stronger, and it was coming. There's no time left, Einar said, gripping his dagger. Then you must be ready, the Diwata whispered. The serpent struck before dawn, its massive coils churning the earth. The jungle erupted in flame. Trees shattered beneath the creature's scaled body as it closed in on the altar. I'll hold its flames, the Diwata cried, conjuring a wall of fire to counter the Bakunawa's breath. Einar sprinted through the smoke, the dagger burning cold in his palm. He leapt onto the beast's back, driving the blade into its scales. Frost surged outward, turning the black scales white with ice. The Bakunawa screamed, writhing violently. Einar held on, focusing every ounce of strength on the blade's cold pulse. The ice spread faster, but the beast thrashed wildly, and Einar was flung from its back. Finish it, the Diwata shouted. Her flames faltered as the beast advanced on her. Bloodied and battered, Einar rose. He closed his eyes, recalling the whispers of frost from the altar. He thrust the dagger forward, not with force, but with calm focus. Ice lanced from the blade like a spear, piercing the Bakunawa's chest. The serpent shrieked one final time before freezing solid, its massive body crackling as frost overtook it. The great beast crumbled like shattered stone, scales falling away in frozen shards. Einar collapsed to his knees. The Diwata knelt beside him, her hand warm on his shoulder. "You have learned well," she said quietly. "But this victory has a price." The frozen remains of the Bakunawa smoldered faintly, a thin wisp of smoke curling from the shattered scales. Something dark lingered beneath the ice, a warning that the beast's spirit had not yet fully departed. Chapter 4. Shadows of the Forgotten. In the aftermath of the Bakunawa's defeat, the jungle still smoldered with the remnants of fire and ice. The frozen remains of the beast had begun to melt, leaving behind pools of dark water that reeked of sulfur. The earth itself seemed uneasy, and the air hummed with an unnatural tension. "Something is wrong," the Diwata whispered. "The Bakunawa's spirit should have faded, yet I feel its presence stirring still." Einar stood over the shattered remains of the beast, his dagger's frost now faint and dim. He scowled. "If this thing still lingers, then what must I do?" The Diwata knelt beside the frozen scales. She reached out and traced a symbol that had been hidden beneath the ice, a jagged rune resembling a serpent swallowing its own tail. "The curse has roots deeper than I feared," she said grimly. "The Bakunawa's spirit is bound to an ancient covenant, one that ties it to both fire and ice. This symbol, it's the mark of the sons of Surtur." "Surtur?" Einar's voice grew tense. "The fire giant who guards the end of days?" "Yes," the Diwata confirmed. "There are whispers of a pact made long ago. The Bakunawa was not only a devourer of moons, but a vessel of Surtur's power. The flames you faced were no ordinary fire. They were embers of Ragnarok itself." Einar clenched his fists. "Then the beast's spirit isn't gone. It's seeking a new vessel." "Exactly." The Diwata's face was pale. "And the cursed dagger, the power you wield, it is what drew Surtur's influence here. The frost within the blade battles the flames, but if you lose control, I become the vessel," Einar finished grimly. That night, Einar dreamed of frozen tundras bathed in red fire. He stood atop a field of ice as giants of flame marched toward him. In their wake trailed a shadow, the coiling form of the Bakunawa, reborn in smoke and ash. At the heart of the vision stood a figure cloaked in molten armor, a being with burning eyes that pierced Einar's soul. "Your fire will rise," the voice rumbled, "and the world will burn." Einar awoke covered in frost, his breath curling from his lips like smoke. His dagger lay cold in his hand, yet dark veins of heat pulsed faintly along its hilt. "It's already begun," he muttered. The Diwata greeted him at dawn with grim news. The villagers had reported strange shadows moving through the jungle, figures wrapped in smoke with glowing red eyes. Trees withered wherever they passed, and whispers filled the wind. "The sons of Surtur have come," the Diwata warned. "They seek the Bakunawa's spirit, and your dagger will lead them to it." Einar tightened his grip on the blade. "Then we meet them first." They tracked the fiery intruders to a ruined temple, a forgotten shrine built long before the island's people had abandoned their ancient gods. The stone walls were scorched black, and runes blazed along the pillars. At the center knelt a cloaked figure chanting in a forgotten tongue. Flames coiled around his hands, and the air rippled with heat. "He's calling the Bakunawa's spirit," the Diwata hissed. "If he succeeds, the beast will rise again, stronger and more furious." Einar wasted no time. He charged forward, dagger in hand, and slashed at the flames. The cursed blade erupted in a blast of frost, extinguishing the fire and freezing the stones beneath his feet. The figure snarled and turned, revealing a face half consumed by flame. A mark of Surtur's curse. "The serpent will rise!" the figure roared, thrusting his hand skyward. The wind howled, and smoke coiled above the temple like a living serpent. From within the twisting dark, the shadow of the Bakunawa began to take shape, its molten eyes gleaming. "Einar!" the Diwata cried. "Focus the frost! Sever the spirit's link to its vessel! Einar gritted his teeth, closing his eyes to the chaos. He felt the dagger's cold pulse align with the earth beneath him. He plunged the blade into the stone altar, sending tendrils of frost snaking outward. The smoke serpent writhed and shrieked as the frost spread, encasing the shadow in ice. The cloaked figure stumbled, clutching his chest as flames sputtered and died. The frozen form of the Bakunawa's spirit shivered violently before shattering like glass. The Diwata breathed a sigh of relief. The curse is severed, for now. But Einar's gaze lingered on the shattered ice. Among the frozen shards lay a sliver of obsidian, still faintly warm to the touch. The cursed flame had not been fully extinguished, and the threat was far from over. Epilogue. Embers in the frost. The winds carried the scent of scorched earth long after the battle had ended. Though the Bakunawa's spirit had been frozen and shattered, the land bore the scars of flame and frost alike. Trees stood twisted and blackened, and vines no longer flourished across the once vibrant jungle. Einar stood at the temple's edge, staring at the obsidian shard in his palm. It pulsed faintly, a slow, steady throb of heat that no frost could extinguish. He clenched his fist tightly, but the warmth remained, whispering promises of power and destruction. "You can leave that here," the Diwata warned, appearing behind him. "No good can come from carrying Surtur's fire." "I know," Einar said softly, yet he did not release the shard. "The sons of Surtur will return," the Diwata continued. "They know the flame still lingers, and they will seek it." Einar's gaze shifted toward the horizon. "Then let them come." "You would invite that battle?" "If I abandon this, they'll find it anyway. Better they follow me, and face someone prepared." He tucked the shard into a leather pouch and tied it to his belt. The flame's power won't die so easily, but frost endures. The Diwata's face was troubled, but she placed a hand on his arm. "Then you must learn patience. The cold is strongest, not when it rages, but when it waits." They parted ways that evening. The Diwata returned to her people, guiding the survivors as they rebuilt. Yet the whispers of flame still haunted Einar's steps. He traveled north, through ruined coastlines and charred forests. Each night, the obsidian shard's pulse seemed louder, and his dreams burned with images of fire giants marching beneath a sky turned black with ash. One evening, Einar found himself at the edge of a frozen fjord. A lone raven circled above, a familiar sight from his homeland. As the bird landed before him, Einar recognized the gleaming silver ring clutched in its beak, a symbol of Odin's messengers. "Even the gods have taken notice," Einar muttered. "Ragnarok stirs." He turned back to the distant jungle, where the Bakunawa's frozen remains still lingered beneath ice and earth. The world felt fragile, as though fire and frost were circling one another in a dangerous dance. "This isn't over," Einar whispered, feeling the shard's warmth against his chest. "Not yet."